we're picking up, focus eyes, Act 2, Scene 4. And I just need to make a comment. I don't think anything's going to happen, but I have to keep my phone out. If my wife calls or texts me, we'll probably stop in class immediately and let everybody go. I'll let you know why later on if I need to. Page 308 in my edition. I have no idea what it is in your edition. So, Rosaline and Celia, in disguise as Ganymede and Aliena, have left the court for the forest, for Arden. They're going to seek out Rosaline's father, Duke Senior, and his what do you want to call the people he has with him? The court in exile, the shadow court, so to speak, something like that. And Touchstone is with them, and Touchstone is with them really for one purpose only. He provides comic relief. Okay, he doesn't take anything seriously, and he just turns everything essentially into a joke. They meet up with a young shepherd and an old shepherd. Young shepherd is Silvius, the old shepherd is Corin. And we find out that Silvius is in love with someone. And on 308, beginning lines, where are they not line numbers there? Around, or there. 20 and following, it looks like. Okay, Rosaline and Celia and Touchstone stand away, and they listen into this conversation. Okay? And Corin says, I know what it's like to be in love. I've been in love too. And Sylvia says, no, you're old. You can't guess. The stupidity of youth to assume that no one else has experienced what they're now experiencing. So, Corin talks about how he's fallen into a thousand fantasies such as Sylvius is experiencing. So they keep listening to this conversation, and I'm going to get to the end of it. They leave, and Rosaline says, alas, poor shepherd. Okay, now she's speaking to Aliena and Touchstone. Alas, poor shepherd, line 42, searching of thy wound, I have by hard adventure found mine own. That is, by Silvius's looking inwardly and trying to understand what is happening to him and expressing that to Corin, she's merely experienced what she's going through. This is how Shakespeare shows that plays and drama are mimetic. They imitate. Okay? Aristotle, in his little book on drama called that train of thought just totally derailed. Aristotle wrote a little book on drama about how drama works, what drama is, etc. And he's focusing on tragedy. Okay, this isn't tragedy, but it still applies. He said every drama, every play mirrors life. I mean, the word drama means to act, to portray. Right? We take it today to mean, a drama is what kind of act? Oh, serious and solemn. No. Okay? So, she's heard his play, so to speak, and applies it to herself. Hamlet, we're going to see Shakespeare put in the mouth of Hamlet to say, every play, every action put on by players is meant to hold a mirror up to nature. That is, it shows us ourselves. So that's what she's just experienced. By hearing Silvius delve into his distemper, the problem with his temperament, she realizes, I'm in love. Okay, with Orlando. Touchstone. Yeah, and I found my problem too, etc. And he goes on. So we're going to skip him. So they go back and forth. Corin comes back in. It was only Silvius that left earlier. And he says to Rosaline, around line, beginning with the speech that begins line 71. Well, I'll just read the whole thing. Fair sir, speaking to Rosaline as Ganymede, I pity her and wish for her sake more than for mine own. My fortunes were more able to relieve her, but I am shepherd to another man and do not shear the fleeces that I graze. That is, I'm a servant. I don't have the wherewithal. The one he's in love with deserves someone of higher standing, essentially. Okay? Do not shear the fleeces that I graze. My master, the one he works for, is of churlish disposition. Now, I don't know if your gloss has something for churlish. Mine says miserly. Okay? A churl, however, its old English original meaning is just someone who's low-born, someone who works the land. And because of that, it develops the meaning of stingy. Because if you're low-born and you work the land, what do you not have much of? Money. Okay? My master is of churlish disposition, and little recks to find the way to heaven by doing deeds of hospitality. What does that mean, little recks? R-E-C-K-S.
Like little deeds, little chores.
How do we use that word, R-E-C-K, today? We don't use it in that specific form.
Like reckless.
Nope.
Record or record.
I reckon. That's the only way we still use it. Okay? What does it mean? To think, to consider, to ponder. My master is of churlish disposition. That is, he's a skinflint. And little considers, little ponders, little thinks about to find the way to heaven. How? By doing deeds of hospitality. What does he mean by doing deeds of hospitality? What is a hospitable deed? She's thirsty. Give a cup of water. Somebody's hungry. You give them something to eat. Somebody's naked. You give them clothes. Somebody's lonely. You visit them. Someone's suicidal. You talk. All of those are deeds of hospitality. What is he saying about his master? It's not just that he doesn't do them. That's only part of it. He little recks to find the way to heaven by doing these. In other words, his master, to put it kind of very bluntly, is not Catholic. A central means of salvation in the Catholicism of Shakespeare's day is doing what? Good deeds. A central tenet of Catholicism is your good deeds show your faith. Just read the book of James in the New Testament. Okay? Protestantism says, especially more so in Shakespeare's day than today, you don't have to do any good deeds. Good deeds will get you absolutely nothing. They are rags. They are trash. Okay? Essentially, John Calvin said. Notice, Shakespeare's bringing up in this comedy about whatever it's about, as you like it, there are theological issues being interwoven in. Okay? Besides, his coat, his flocks, and bounds of feet are now on sale and at our sheepcote. That is, everything's for sale. So, he says, we can go there, you can rest, you can relax. He's not there, don't worry. What is Corin showing them? Deeds of hospitality. And I should mention, this idea of hospitality, goes back thousands of years. It is probably, I don't know if I've used the term before, I think I have. It's probably an Indo-European idea The Indo-Europeans were originally a small group of people, probably from the southern steppes of what is today modern Russia, eastern Ukraine, north of the Black and Caspian Seas. At some point in time, they started spreading out, and they became the progenitors of all the what are called Indo-European languages. Almost all the languages of Europe, except Finnish and Hungarian and Basque in Spain, all the languages of India, all the languages of Russia, okay, the Italic languages, the Greek languages, all those, Germanic, okay. They apparently had this idea that you need to show, to use a phrase from Streetcar Named Desire, kindness to strangers. Why? Anybody know? This is related to the idea, it's the opposite of xenophobia. It's xenophilia. Xeno means outsider, foreigner, alien. Phobia, fear of. What's xenophilia? Love of outsiders, love of foreigners, love of strangers, love of aliens. But it's not romantic love. It's acceptance wanting the best for, okay? Ancient Greek, the Odyssey. Odyssey really, really hits this. People who are not nice to Odysseus in his travels as he tries to make his way back home, they're kind of warned for the simple reason that sometimes the gods take human form to test our hospitality. St. Paul says the same thing in the New Testament. Sometimes people, he says, serve angels unawares. Okay? So this idea about someone comes knocking at your door at night, you better open up, be kind to them, goes way, 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 way back. That's kind of what he's getting at here, this idea of hospitality. So, they agreed to go off to the sheepcote and the little hovel, essentially, where they're going to stay. 2:5 opens with Amiens singing one of Shakespeare's more famous songs. And Jacques is like, more, 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 because listen to what the song says. Under the greenwood tree, tree in a greenwood, who loves to lie with me. Lie has multiple meanings there. It can mean lie, let's get horizontal, and it can mean to tell an untruth to. And turn his merry note unto the sweet bird's throat. Come hither, come hither, come hither. That is, come to me, come to me, come to me. Bird is also has multiple meanings. It can mean a literal bird, tweet, tweet, out in the trees. It could also be slang for a young, sexy woman. Okay? Here shall he see no enemy but winter and rough weather. So it sounds like, come on, let's come live in the woods and it'll be nice and warm in springtime. But instead what you're going to find is winter and rough weather. Meaning what? Metaphor for human relationships, for men and women, male-female relationships. Like women, you can't live with them, you can't live without them, kind of that idea. That's why Jacques says more. He likes this kind of stuff. Jacques can best be described as a satirist or a parodist. He pokes fun at everything, not to just make a joke. He's what Saturday Night Live just had their 50th anniversary. He's what Saturday Night Live used to be when I first started watching it, when it first came on, for about the first 5-10 years. It was parody and satire across the board. It poked fun at everybody for one reason. Hold that mirror up and show some famous person what a damn fool he or she is. What's the purpose? Stop being a damn fool. Look at what you look like. Change. The purpose of satire is to effect change in the person or persons or group that is being satirizing. It's to get them to should be reform also up here. To reform. Okay? So, they keep going back and forth. Amiens says, but it'll make you melancholy if I keep singing like this. I thank it. More, I prithee, more. I can suck melancholy out of a song as a weasel sucks eggs. What's he mean? What's melancholy? If you have a melancholic disposition, what does that say about you? Louder.
Gloomy?
Gloomy. Perfect word for it. You're the kind of person who sees a bottle half empty rather than actually more than empty. More than half empty. Okay? Always looks at as a friend of mine once said, the gray backing on the silver lining of a cloud. Because every time there's a silver lining, what does that mean? That's just the tip of the iceberg. The rest of the cloud is gray and dark. All hell's about to visit you. Okay? That's the kind of person he is. He will take any situation that has happiness and joy and find the darkness in it. He's a favorite character of Shakespeare's because, he's pretty good at that. He's the one person at the end of, I'll just give this away, at the end of the play who's not totally happy at the end because he's never totally happy. Okay? So, we're going to skip the rest of the act. Adam and Orlando come in that scene. Adam and Orlando come in Act 2, Scene 6. Adam, I can go no farther. He's pooped. Of course, he's old. Really old. Okay? Orlando kind of cheers him up. Come on, you can go a little bit more. Come on, Adam. Adam can't go anymore. So what does Orlando do? He picks him up in his arms. This is what? This is hospitality. He's carrying him. Adam has become a burden, but for Orlando, it's not burdensome. I could quote a passage of scripture, but I won't. 2:7. Duke Sr. and his train come in. Okay? And they're talking about Jaques. And Jaques comes in and says, line 12, a fool, a fool. I met a fool in the forest. A motley fool. Why is he called a motley fool? Because of his clothes. He wears the kind of the insignia, the uniform of a fool, multicolored, party-colored. Think of the Harlequin kind of costume. It's exactly what it is. As I do live by food, I met a fool. So that's a way of uttering a strange oath. We all do live by food, therefore he met a fool, who laid him down and basked him in the sun and railed on Lady Fortune in good terms and good set terms, and yet a motley fool. Okay? He goes on and on and on. And Duke Sr., what fool is this? That is, what's his name? Who is he? He goes on. Okay. Notice what this is telling us about Jaques. It's like he's dancing around. He is so excited to meet a fool. Why? And what does he mean by a fool? Does he mean somebody with an IQ of 80? No. A jester. A jester. This is someone who, like Jaques, will poke fun at things, but unlike Jaques, there's not necessarily a point to it. He makes jokes to tear down. Touchstone. Okay? So, Jaques says at the end of his next little speech, oh, I'm ambitious for a motley coat. He wants to dress like a fool. Duke Sr., thou shalt have one. Now, that can mean, yes, I'll get you a motley fool's coat, or it can be, you will be one. Just keep going. It is my only suit, that it is the only thing appropriate for me. Different kind of fool than Touchstone, though. See, in the Middle Ages and in Shakespeare's day, it was thought some quote-unquote fools. Today we would call them some quote-unquote people who aren't properly dealing with reality. Some people who have lost contact with reality. It happened because they were touched by God. That is, they saw things, they see things that we don't see. Thus, they were allowed to say things that the rest of us can't. Like in the children's tale or the story of the emperor's new clothes. The little boy, in that sense, is a fool because he says things he shouldn't say. He gets away with it because he's a little boy. Okay? So, he goes on and says all kinds of things. And Duke Sr. says, let me back up. Line 53. Jacques is talking about what the fool can say. He that a fool doth very wisely hit, doth very foolishly. That is, the person that the fool points out, satirizes, that person responds foolishly. Although he's smart, that is, although he's in pain, not to seem senseless of the bob. If not, the wise man's folly is anatomized. That is, it's broken down into its constituent elements. The wise man's folly is taken apart, and it's applied publicly, even by the squandering glances of the fool. Give me my fool's coat. Give me leave to speak my mind, and I will through and through cleanse the foul body of the infected world, if they will patiently receive my medicine. Give me office, he's saying, to speak my mind to everybody, and I will clean up the world. How? Because I'm going to point out your faults and your faults and your faults. For what purpose? To get you to stop doing them. And that's how the world will be cleansed. Duke Sr., fie on thee. It's a Renaissance way of saying, F you. I can tell what thou wouldst do. I can tell. I'm able to tell what you will say. He's saying, no, you're not going to say the kinds of things you're saying you're going to say. What would I do but good? Duke Sr. So, what for counter would I do but good? What do you think I would do other than good? Most mischievous, foul sin in chiding sin. How can you chide sin? Duke Sr. is asking Jacques. Church fathers, I don't know if Shakespeare was familiar with the church fathers or not. Many of the church fathers say, do not point out another person's sin. Even Christ, someone sins against you, forgive them. Peter, how many times? 7? 7 times 7. Why else does Duke Sr. say this? So, most mischievous foul sin in chiding sin, for thou hast thyself been a libertine. You've been sleeping around with everything that moves. As sensual as the brutish sting itself. Brutish sting. I don't know if your book has a gloss. Mine says carnal impulse, the desire for sex, and all the embossed sores and headed evils, talking about STDs, okay, that thou with license of free foot hast caught. Free foot because he goes into beds, rooms, houses he doesn't belong in, which thou disgorge into the general world. That is, you would spew out your foul disease. Okay? So what does Jacques do? He starts to talk about the kinds of things he would talk about. pride, etc. Okay? Skip the rest of that. Orlando comes in with his sword drawn. Where's Adam? He set him down for a while. He set him down so that he could go off and try to find food and drink to revive Adam from his fainting. Comes in and says, "Forbear, eat no more," because they're all chowing down. And Duke Sr. says, "What would you have?" I'm skipping a little bit. 101. What would you have? That is, what do you want? Your gentleness shall force more than your force move us to gentleness. Put your sword away and just ask. Why does Orlando come in sword drawn? Why did he come in and say, "Please, sir, can I have some food?" What's he used to? It's an R. They're in the forest. He's used to this. What kind of gentleness has Orlando experienced at court? From, primarily, his brother. He hasn't experienced this. It's like he doesn't know how to do this, though we know he does because of how he treats Adam. What does he receive from Adam? Gentleness. Duke Sr. is like, not the same as, but like Duke Frederick. They're all dukes. Channel your inner Bernie Sanders, you know. They're all the 1%ers, so to speak. Ask. I almost died for food and let me have. Sit down. Eat. Welcome to our table. And you got to imagine, Orlando's like, okay, what's going on here? What's the trick? They're going to give me poison food? Speak you so gently? Pardon me, I pray you. I thought that all things had been savage here, and therefore I put on the countenance of stern commandment. Why did he think all things were savage here? Here meaning in the wood. Because he's read his Jean-Jacques Rousseau about the noble savage. But there, in Rousseau, it's not what Orlando says. According to Rousseau, it's society that makes humans evil. Okay? I thought that all things had been savage here, and therefore I put on the countenance of stern commandment. Why does he think it's savage? Because you don't have the civilizing structures of the court. But whatever you are, that in this desert inaccessible, does it look like a desert? They've got food, they've got fruit. Under the shade of melancholy boughs, lose and neglect the creeping hours of time. If ever you have looked on better days. So he's addressing Duke Sr. and the others. If ever you have looked on better days, if ever been where bells have knolled to church, that is, the bells have rung telling you it's time to go to church, but it also means it's time to come to a funeral. If ever sat at any good man's feast, if ever from your eyelids wiped a tear, meaning you are capable of human compassion, and know what 'tis to pity and be pitied, let gentleness my strong enforcement be, in the hope which I blush and hide my sword. Nice long speech to say, my sword is sheathed. He's at what? I'm at your mercy. Duke Sr. True is it, we have seen better days. Now, does Orlando know who Duke Sr. is at this point? Do we get any indication that he's like, you used to rule the court? Nothing like that. We don't know how long Duke Sr.'s been out in the woods. He could have a beard down to here as far as we know. Okay? True is it, we have seen better days, and have with holy bell been gnawed to church, and sat at good men's feasts, and wiped our eyes of drops that sacred pity hath engendered sacred pity, that is sorrow and empathy for others whose problems are worse than ours. And therefore sit you down in gentleness, and take upon command what help we have, that to your wanting may be ministered. In other words, whatever you need, we'll give it to you within our abilities. Then hold off. Stop eating for a while. Whiles, like a doe, I go to find my fawn and give it food. Don't eat while I go to bring help to an old poor man, who after me hath many a weary step, limped in pure love. Who, he says, after me, doesn't mean like me. He has limped in pure love for me, till he be first sufficed, oppressed with two weak evils, age and hunger. I will not touch, I'm not going to eat until he does. Go, Duke Sr. says. Okay? He leaves. Duke Sr. Thou seest, and this leads into one of Shakespeare's all-time great speeches. It gets anthologized everywhere. You got recordings out the wazoo on YouTube and such. Thou seest, we are not all alone unhappy. In other words, our problems, and our here might be the royal we, meaning my. I am not altogether alone unhappy. What is he saying? We all experience this. Why? To use a phrase that literature professors love to use, we all experience the human condition. And that's the value of literature. It allows us to experience what everybody else experiences. Thou seest, we are not all alone unhappy, this wide and universal theater. And if I were directing him, and he'd kind of go like this, pointing to the audience, presents more woeful pageants than the scene wherein we play in. Because what do we individually tend to think when our lives are falling apart? It's the worst thing there is. And what is Shakespeare saying? You're not alone. Others have gone through this. Others have overcome this. There's an Old English poem called Dior. And it's about a guy who used to be a great singer, poet, served this great king, and is replaced by another guy. And the poet, Dior, talks about these people in history who've risen to the top and then had terrible downfalls. And he has this little refrain. It's the only Old English poem with the refrain. That was overcome, so may this be. That is, that great difficulty overcome by that hero was overcome, so may this, mine, be overcome. It's an example of a consolation, a consolatio. It should bring solace to the person going, my life sucks. But his life sucked worse than mine. He got better. Don't stop. Keep going, okay? So, Jaques listens to Duke Sr. Okay, remember, Jaques is a melancholic. He's got kind of a depressed disposition. He looks on the dark side of things. All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. And one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. At first the infant, mewling and puking in the nurse's arms. Notice, not smiling, not babbling, not cooing, mewling and puking. Then the whining schoolboy, with his satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. I can't help but think Shakespeare hated going to that King Edward VI school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace. Why? Because to be in love is to be filled with ardor, A-R-D-O-R. It's a word that has a similar meaning to be inflamed like a temperature, like a high fever, with a woeful ballad made to his mistress's eyebrow. He writes a ballad describing one stupid facet of her appearance. Okay? Then a soldier, full of strange oaths and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, that in means for, jealous, envious for honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation, even in the cannon's mouth. Seeking the bubble. What's the bubble? Reputation, fame, glory. What does every bubble do? What happens to that fame and glory and reputation? We'll hear Falstaff talk about it in the Henry IV plays. First one. Notice what happens to the soldier. Seeks that bubble reputation, that glory, that fame. How? In the cannon's mouth. Read Tennyson's Charge of the Light Brigade. Real event. Whole mess of soldiers, the 300, rode the 300 into the cannon's charge. I mean, they knew they were going to die. They knew the orders were wrong. This was in the Crimean War in the 1860s. They knew they weren't supposed to do this. And yet they had their orders and they rode straight into cannon fire. And then the justice, another kind of occupation. In fair round belly with good capon lined. He's talking like a justice of the peace. Notice how the justice of the peace is described. Fat, bloated, well-fed, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut. Severe meaning looking, squinting at everybody, trying to determine good or evil, guilt or innocence. Full of wise saws, sayings, and modern instances, and so he plays his part. The sixth age shifts into the lean and slippered pantaloon. Modern equivalent, pajamas and slippers. Why are they lean? Because the man's legs have now become thinner. He's old. With spectacles on nose and pouch, fat on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank. He keeps them, but they no longer fit. In his big, manly voice, turning again toward childish treble, pipes and whistles in his sound. That is, as he speaks, he goes like this. Can't do that. Oh, wow. Least of all, I've got a sore throat anyways, and that just, that was the coup de grace. Last scene of all that ends this strange, eventful history is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans anything. Sans French, without. Last age of all, second childishness. Meaning, become a vegetable. I think, could be wrong, Alzheimer's. This is written after 1598. Shakespeare's father dies right around that time, if I remember right. I don't know if, I'll have to look that up. And I said it the other day, I think Lear is all about somebody's descent into Alzheimer's. It's usually described as a descent into madness. From an Alzheimer's perspective, everything Lear does makes perfectly good sense. Okay? So, how's that for a Hey, it's a pick-me-up speech. That's the kind of speech you want a coach to deliver at halftime when you're down a few points. That's melancholy. That is seeing the bleak in everything. Okay? Orlando comes in with Adam. He sets him down. Amiens sings another song. And we get to the end of the scene. Duke Sr. says to Orlando, if that you were the good Sir Roland's son, as you have whispered faithfully you were, and as my eye doth his effigies witness, that is, when I look at you, I see your father. Spitting image, so to speak. Most truly limbed and living in your face, be truly welcome hither. I am the Duke that loved your father. The residue of your fortune, go to my cave and tell me. That is, what's left of your fortune. Now that can mean monetary wealth, or it can mean what's happened to you since your father died. Come to my cave. Tell me. Adam, good old man, thou art right welcome as thy master is. What has he just done? He made them equals. That is true hospitality. He doesn't acknowledge any kind of social status difference other than labeling Orlando as his master. Okay? Support him by the arm. Give me your hand. So is that Orlando support Adam by the arm and Adam give me notice? They're both doing what? They're both becoming crutches, so to speak, for Adam. Okay? 3-1. Enter Duke Frederick, Lords and Oliver. Enter where? They're coming into the forest. Oh, sorry, they're still in the court. They're going to be coming into the forest very soon. Not see him since? Sir, that cannot be. But were I not the better part made mercy, I should not seek an absent argument of my revenge, thou present. But look to it. Find out thy brother, he's talking to Oliver, find out thy brother, find Orlando, bring him dead or living within this 12th month, or don't come back. So if you don't bring him, you're banished. Duke Frederick is a perfect example of what the character Crayon says to Oedipus in Oedipus the King. You'd make a perfect king all alone on an island. Why? Nobody to talk back to you. Nobody to disobey you. Thy lands and all things that thou dost call thine worth, seizure do we seize into our hands. If you don't find Orlando and bring him to me, I'm taking everything. Okay? Oliver replies, oh, that your highness knew my heart in this. I never loved my brother in my life. He's not saying, I haven't only hated my brother for the last 2 weeks or the last 2 years. He's saying, I never liked him. That's why he gets Duke Frederick's response. More villain thou. That implies, doesn't state, implies Duke Frederick at some time did love his brother. Push him out. Okay? Orlando, we're back in the woods. He comes in with a paper. Shakespeare loves doing this kind of thing. Hang there my verse in witness of my love, and he tacks a paper onto a tree with this poem that he's written, this song. Okay? He leaves it and goes. Corn and Touchstone come in. Okay? Let's see here. They talk back and forth. No, I'm going to skip all that. Rosaline comes in with a paper reading. Line 86. Okay. From the east to western end, no jewel is like Rosalind. Her worth being mounted on the wind through all the world bears Rosalind. All the pictures fairest lined are but black to, it's supposed to rhyme, so Rosalind. Let no face be kept in mind but the fair of Rosaline. Touchstone. I'll rhyme you so 8 years together, dinners and suppers and sleeping hours accepted. It is the right butter woman's rank to mark it. What's he saying? That's a piece of poetry. Touchstone then gives his own version of a poem about Rosalind. Here's an example for a taste. If a hart do like a hind, let him seek out Rosaline. If the cat will after kind, so be sure will Rosaline. Winter garments must be lined, so must slender Rosalind. A lot of innuendo on that one. They that reap must sheaf and bind, then to cart with Rosaline. Sweetest nut has sourest rind, such a nut is Rosaline. Every nut, you gotta peel open. He that sweetest rose will find must find love's prick and Rosaline. Yet prick had the same meaning in Shakespeare's day as it does in ours. Sonnet 20 talks about nature falling in love with a human that nature was creating initially for initially for men's pleasure, a woman. But she fell so a doting on this that she pricked thee out for women's pleasure, and of my desire all stopping, gave the body a prick, took away my pleasure because the speaker is a male, and gave the pleasure to women. So again, whenever Shakespeare can pun, he's going to do it. If it's a dirty pun, he likes those even more. Simple reason. Think of the structure of the globe or the theater at the same time. You got all these people down here standing in the yard who like dirty jokes or innuendo. Okay? So, Celia finds another letter and reads it. And so Rosaline and Celia go back and forth talking all about Orlando. Okay? And let's see. Line 194, 5, around line 197. She's finishing a little speech that begins, good my complexion. Well, I'll just read the whole thing. Dost thou think, though I am caparisoned, that is dressed, like a man, I have a doublet and hose in my disposition? What does she mean? I'm dressed like a man. Do you think I internally am like a man? What is she saying? She's saying something that isn't widely acknowledged today. Men and women are different, wired differently. She's saying, I'm a woman through and through. I'm just wearing a man's clothes. Okay? 1 inch of delay more is the South Sea of discovery. I prithee tell me who is it quickly and speak apace. I would thou couldst stammer that thou mightst pour this concealed man out of thy mouth as wine comes out of a narrow mouth bottle, either too much at once or none at all. Celia, tell me who wrote these. I prithee take the cork out of thy mouth that I may drink thy tidings. Look at Celia's rather pregnant reply. So you may put a man in your belly. Notice what she said? So that I may drink your tidings. What are the tidings? Orlando. So if she drinks Orlando, she puts him in her belly. Is he of God's making? What manner of man? Is his head worth a head or his chin worth a beard? He had a little beard. Send me more, if the man will be thankful. Let me stay the growth of his beard, if thou delay me not the knowledge of his chin. It is young Orlando. that tripped up the wrestler's heels, and your heart both in an instant. Stop. Nay, but the devil don't mock me. Okay? How bad does Rosalind have it for Orlando? Pretty bad. Orlando? Alas the day, 2:16. What shall I do with my doublet and hose? In other words, I need to put a dress on. Fast. What did he when thou sawest him? What said he? How looked he? Wherein went he? What makes it? What does she sound like? Okay. Man speaking here, can't totally identify, but 3 sisters, so I have a pretty good idea. She sounds like a teenager in love. Did you talk to Fred? What did Fred say? How did he look? Did you talk about me? Just ad infinitum. Wherein went he? What makes he here? Did he ask? There it is. Did he ask for me? Where remains he? How parted he with thee? And when shalt thou see me? Answer. Notice, in one word. How could she answer all those questions with one word? You must borrow me Gargantua's mouth first. 'Tis a word too great. Does he know I'm here? And in man's apparel? Does he look as freshly as he did the day he wrestled? What does that mean, as freshly? Is he as hot as he was then? And so they talk back and forth. There lay he stretched along like a wounded knight. Though it be pity to see such a sight, it well becomes the ground. In other words, oh ground, how lucky ground, to have Orlando stretched upon it. Again, Shakespeare loves imagery, okay? Cry holla to thy tongue. Shut up, is what she's telling Rosalind. He comes to kill my heart. I would sing my song without a burden, thou bringest me out of tune. Do you not know I am a woman when I think I must speak? Shakespeare taking a little jab there. Orlando comes in with Jaques. Okay. Rosalind and Celia stand aside. They're still out on the stage, but they probably kind of take hiding behind a tree. Remember, they were in a forest. Jaques, God be with you. Let's meet as little as we can. Yeah, what does that mean? Go away. Orlando, I do desire we may be better strangers. Ouch. Shakespeare is greatest. Well, he's one of the greatest at those one-off, little put-downs. I pray you mar no more trees with writing love songs in their barks. I pray you mar no more of my verses with reading them ill-favoredly. In other words, Orlando has come across Jaques with some of Orlando's verse, and Jaques has read them satirically. Well, how can you do that? You can emphasize certain words over other words. You can do like what, Peter Quince did with the prologue to Pyramus and Thisbe and not keep points so that you can make something mean the opposite of what it should mean. Okay? Rosalind is your love's name? Yes, just. I do not like her name. There was no thought of pleasing you when she was christened. Your parents didn't give her rats, you know what. What stature is she of? Just as high. What does that mean, just as high as my heart? So Rosalind is supposed to be tall. Does this mean he's that much taller? What does it mean, just as high as my heart? She fills up my heart. That's what he means. Oh. You are full of pretty answers. Have you not been acquainted with goldsmiths' wives? Conned them out of rings? Sexual innuendo there. Slept with them, taken their ring. Not so, but I answer you right, painted cloth. Painted cloth. What is Jaques now wearing? A motley's outfit. from whence you have studied your questions. You are a nimble wit. So they go back and forth. I'm going to skip them until Rosalind speaks to Celia. So Jaques leaves. Now again, Rosalind's dressed how? Like a man. It has some kind of covering, disguise, dirtied her face or something. I will speak to him like a saucy lackey, and under that habit play the knave with him. Do you hear, Forester? Or probably more like, do you hear, Forester? Very well. What is it, o'clock? What time? You should ask me what time of day. There is no clock in the forest. Then there is no true lover in the forest. What? Else sighing every minute and groaning every hour would detect the lazy foot of time as well as of a clock. She's overheard the conversation. If you really are a true lover, she says, you would know what? Every minute of what time it is. Why? Because every minute that you're away from your lover is like a minute lost of your life, a minute closer to death. And why not the swift foot of time? Had not that been as proper? No. Time travels in diverse paces with diverse persons. True or false? Does time travel differently with each of us?
No.
Feels like it.
Yeah.
Bingo. Because for you right now, when I was in your shoes, it was like, oh God, please let this end. Heart attack, anything, just hated classes. I was a poor English student. For me, it doesn't, I'm quote unquote on. I'm performing, so it doesn't take that long. I usually look at my watch or clock and I'm like, I don't have enough time, okay? Shakespeare realizes this in the 16th century. We have different perceptions of time according to our experience, how we enjoy it. If you're on a date with somebody, you want it to go how? Slow. If it's a good date. If it's a bad date, you want it to go really, really fast. Okay? One can be pleasurable, one can be hell,
Unless you're at Jimmy Kelly's like I was on Saturday, then you want to get the hell out of there. And that was with my fiance, so.
I hope you wanted to get the hell out of there with him,
Oh, yeah.
rather than
It was just awful. I felt so out of place, and me and him were both sitting there like, okay, can I go?
Yep, been there, done that. Too many times at parties. So, I'll tell you who time ambles withal. Ambles, slow pace. Who time trots withal. Notice horsemanship imagery. Who time gallops withal. And who he stands still withal. Out of those four, Orlando, who's he trot with? He trots hard with a young maid between the contract of her marriage and the day it is solemnized. That is, the day the wedding occurs, solemnized, consummated, the wedding night. All right? Moves quickly. Not as quickly as galloping. Okay? If the interim be but a sennight, that's a week. Lost my place. Time's pace is so hard that it seems the length of 7 years. In other words, if there's only a week to go, it just tick, tock, tick, tock. Whose time amble withal? With the priest that lacks Latin and the rich man that hath not the gout. For the one sleeps easily because he cannot study. The priest who doesn't know Latin sleeps easily because he doesn't have to study, doesn't have to learn. And the other lives merrily because he feels no pain. The one lacking the burden of lean and wasteful learning, the other knowing no burden of heavy, tedious penury. These time ambles withal, it goes slowly. Who does he gallop with? With the thief to the gallows? Not enough time. For though he as softly as foot can fall, he thinks himself too soon there. Who does it stay still withal? With lawyers in the vacation. Vacation doesn't mean lawyers at the beach. It means lawyers between terms of court. It stops. They don't have any concerns. They don't have any worries. For they sleep between term and term, and then they perceive not how time moves. Where dwell you, pretty youth? Kind of good looking, gorgeous, Not any homosexual stuff. With this shepherdess, my sister, here in the skirts of the forest. Are you native? Were you born here? As the coney that you see dwell, there she is kindled. He says, you don't sound like you're from these parts. She speaks how? Like someone bred at court. Okay? She says, well, I've been taught well, My uncle taught me how to speak, how to read. He learned to be. Orlando. Line 341 to line 343. When she mentioned her uncle, she said she has an old religious uncle, this is 337, of mine, who taught me to speak, who was in his youth an inland man, one that knew courtship too well, for there he fell in love. That is, he wasn't from the woods, he'd been in the city. I heard him read many lectures against love. And I thank God I am not a woman, to be touched with so many giddy offenses, as he hath generally taxed her whole sex withal, that is, entirely. Okay? So what has she just said? I had an uncle who taught me what women in the city are like. Taught me all of their offenses. Thankful I'm a man and don't have these. Orlando, can you remember any of the principal evils that he laid to the charge of women? Well, none principal. That is, no single all-encompassing. They were all like one another as halfpence are, every one fault seeming monstrous, till his fellow fault came to match it. In other words, all of their faults are equally horrible and monstrous. You just kind of have to take them in succession. One drives out the other. Tell me some. Remember, Celia's right there also, and she's still Celia, woman. No, I will not cast away my physic, but on those that are sick. That is, I'm not going to say what the faults of women are, except to those who are sick and need to be healed. Seemingly of the faults of women. Not talking about women. Okay? Those who love women. She doesn't believe he loves her. There's a man haunts the forest that abuses our young plants with carving Rosalind on their barks, hangs odes upon hawthorns and elegies on brambles, all, forsooth, deifying the name of Rosalind, making into a goddess. If I could meet that fancy monger, I would give him some good counsel, for he seems to have the quotidian of love upon him. Quotidian, the fever recurring daily. This is part of the idea of the medical diagnosis of love sickness. It's me, Orlando says. Should you really say that to someone you've just met? Anyways, I pray you, tell me your remedy. So if it's a remedy, what's he asking for? I want to be cured. I want to, to use the line that the nurse sings in South Pacific from the early 1950s. He wants to wash that woman out of his hair, so to speak. He wants to wash her out of his mind. Does he really?
No, but he doesn't know that she wasn't.
Exactly. So, she says, no, there are none of my uncle's marks upon you. Meaning, you don't show any of the signs of being a lover. He taught me how to know a man. What were they? A lean cheek, that is, a hollow cheek. Why? Because not eating enough, because of too in love to think to eat. A blue eye and sunken, blue kind of clouded over, not like, this great Norwegian, blue eye, so to speak. What else? A beard neglected, that is, untrimmed or unshaven, which you have not, but it's okay because simply your having a beard is a younger brother's revenue. In other words, you're not old enough to have a beard. Okay? Let's see what else. Then your hose should be ungartered, your bonnet unbanded, untied, your sleeve unbuttoned, your shoe untied, and everything about you demonstrating a careless desolation. Now, that meets to a T the description of a lovesick lover, male lovesick lover, in Shakespeare's day. But you are no such man. You are rather point device in your accoutrements. In other words, you're dressed pretty nice. You look pretty good. She's borderline there, revealing a little too much. As loving yourself than seeming the lover of any other. Like you look in the mirror and go, I am hot. Fair youth, I would I could make thee believe. I love. Me? You may as soon make her that you love believe it. So, audience totally knows what she just said. Excuse me, what he just said. Orlando's deaf to it, dumb to it. Me believe it, you may as soon make her that you love believe it, which I warrant she is apter to do than to confess she does. That is one of the points in the which women still give the lie to their conscience. But in good sooth, good truth, are you he that hangs the verses on the trees wherein Rosalind is so admired? I am. But are you so much in your love as your rhymes speak? Oh, they don't come close. Love is merely a madness. Lovers, madmen, poets. Love is merely a madness, and I tell you deserves as well a dark house, that is, an asylum, that's what's meant by that, and a whip, because the caretakers in asylums, the main one, Shakespeare's day, being called, nickname Bedlam, that comes from the name Bethlehem. Its pronunciation was just shortened, because the TH was the Bethlehem. Bethlehem became a D, okay? The caretakers, the quote-unquote nurses, the staff, would whip the crazy people into submission, the insane. And to whip as madmen do. And the reason why they are not so punished and cured, that is, lovers, is that the lunacy is so ordinary that the whippers are in love too. What is she saying? We've all experienced it. Who among us is capable of wielding the whip? Yet I profess curing it by counsel. I'm not going to cure it with a whip. Kind of a little dangerous there with the whole BDSM culture and everything. I'll use counsel. I'll use advice. Did you ever cure any others? Have you done it? What's your proof? Yes, one. And here's how I did it. He was to imagine me his love, his mistress, and I set him every day to woo me. At which time would I, being but a moonish youth, grieve, be effeminate, changeable, longing and liking, proud, fantastical, apish, shallow, inconstant, full of tears, full of smiles, for every passion something, and for no passion truly anything, as boys and women are for the most part cattle of this color. In other words, boys and women are like this. Keep in mind what's going on this stage right now. You have a boy pretending to be Rosalind, pretending to be a boy, who's going to pretend to be Rosalind. Okay? Would now like him, now loathe him, then entertain him, then forswear him, now weep for him, then spit at him. How you go from weeping to spitting, they're two pretty strong extremes. That I drain my suitor from his mad humor of love to a living humor of madness, which was to forswear the full stream of the world and to live in a nook merely monastic. She drove her lover, supposed lover, to become what? A monk. Kind of like Hermia had her option to become a nun. And thus I cured him. In this way will I take upon me to wash your liver as clean as a sound sheep's heart. The idea that love comes up from the liver. There shall not be one spot of love in it. I would not be cured, youth. Nope, don't want that. Oh, I would cure you. If you would but call me Rosalind and come every day to my coat, that is to my gate, and woo me, I will. Wait, he just said, I would not. I don't desire to be cured, and now he says I will. Okay? Go ahead.
I kind of took that as like, you can try, but like it's not going to work.
Okay? But at least he gets to talk to Rosalind, the false one. It's like an image of what he wants. Okay? So he says, with all my heart, no, you got to call me Rosalind. No good youth stuff. Okay? Touchstone comes in with Audrey and Jake Lee's apart. Okay? Touchstone and Audrey fall in love. Audrey's just for lack of better words, kind of use the language Shakespeare implies, just a good country wench, you know. They fall in love. Then comes in Sir Oliver Martext. Martext, what does that mean? He mars the text. He's going to do the wedding ceremony. And he just obliterates it. Everything he says is like a malapropism. Okay? So, I'm going to get to the end of that scene. And Touchstone says, 88, when he tells Audrey, let's leave, he says, come, sweet Audrey, we must be married or we must live in bawdry. That is, in sin, so to speak. Rosaline and Celia come in. Okay? Never talk to me. I will weep. Do, I prithee, but have the grace to consider that tears do not become a man. But have I not cause to weep? Why does she want to weep? I saw Orlando. He's got it really bad for me. She can barely keep it inside. Line 16, 17, 18. But why did he swear he would come this morning and comes not? Certainly there is no truth in him. Celia, because he's a man. He's lied. Do you think so? Yes. I think he's not a pick person or a horse stealer. That is, he's not a pickpocket or horse thief. Horse thief about the worst thing he could be. But for his verity, his truthfulness and love, not true in love. Well, yes, when he is in, but I think he is not in. What does Celia mean by that? Yes, I think he's in love when he's really in love with you, that is, and with you. But when he's with someone else, guess what? Then he's in love with her. And her and her and her. Was, not is. So you have heard him swear downright he was. Was, not is. Celia should be a lawyer. She's niggling on the points of tenses of verbs. Besides, the oath of a lover is no stronger than the word of a tapster. What's a tapster?
Bartender.
A bartender. Okay? They are both the confirmer of false reckonings. Because what does a bartender do when you get in a conversation? Yep, you want to keep that tap flowing. He attends here in the forest on the Duke, your father. I met him yesterday. Had much question with him. He asked me of what parentage I was. Told him, Corin comes in. So they talk back and forth with Corin. I'm looking for a specific passage, and I haven't come to it yet or I've skipped it. 3:5. Sylvius and Phoebe come in. Okay, Corin's the old man, who talked about knowing what being in love was like to Sylvius. Sylvius said, "No, you couldn't because you're old." Okay, and now we see Sylvius come in with his heartthrob, Phoebe. What's the problem? She doesn't like him. She doesn't want to have anything to do with him. Okay? What becomes the problem?
Well, Rosalind comes in.
Rosalind comes in and Phoebe's like, damn.
It's like the filthiest read of all time.
Phoebe is struck by how good looking Ganymede is. Okay? Sweet youth, line 64. I pray you chide a year together. I had rather hear you chide than this man woo. Who she sound like from Midsummer Night's Dream? Helena to Demetrius. Go ahead, just call me every name of the book. I get to hear your beautiful voice. Rosalind to Phoebe. He's fallen in love with your foulness. To Sylvius, and she'll fall in love with my anger. So she says to Phoebe, why you look you so upon me? For no ill will I bear you. You do not fall in love with me. I'm falser than vows made in wine. True, right? Besides, I like you not. To Sylvius, she tells him where she lives. Where he lives. And then to Phoebe, shepherdess, look on him better. Meaning, look at him really. Be not proud. This line, next line's hard for me to say. Though all the world could see, none could be so abused in sight as he. What has Ganymede just said about Phoebe? Phoebe, honey, you should be taking what you can get. That Sylvius is what? Abused in sight. He ain't seeing so well if he's in love with Phoebe. Not beauty in the eye of the beholder. Ain't no beauty there. Okay? Dead shepherd, now I find thy saw of might, who ever loved that loved not at first sight. Dead shepherd, it's Christopher Marlowe, in his Hero and Leander, said, whoever loved that loved not at first sight. Marlowe was killed 94, 95, I don't remember the exact year. Okay? But that Hero and Leander was first published in 1598. That shows Shakespeare knew the poem because he quotes it. All right? Marlowe couldn't have copied it from Shakespeare because Marlowe was already dead by the time it was published. Whoever loved that loved not at first sight. Well, who does that apply to? Now, Phoebe is saying it's her towards Ganymede. It also applies to Sylvius toward Phoebe. Okay? And I think it's safe to say Rosalind towards Orlando and Orlando towards Rosalind. Okay? So Phoebe and Sylvius go back and forth. And 1138. Phoebe says, thou hast my love, is not that neighborly? Line 90. I would have you. I don't want your love. I want you. That were covetousness. What's covetousness? Wanting something that isn't yours. What's not Sylvius's? Phoebe's love. Phoebe's love is really, even though she said, thou hast my love, what does she mean?
Friendship.
Sylvius, the time was that I hated thee, and yet it is not that I bear thee love. Notice the tenses. The time was, I used to hate you, and yet it is not now that I bear thee love. I don't love you now. There's an implication of what could happen with the passage of time. I didn't love you, excuse me, I hated you. I don't love you now. That's a progression, right? Now is better than in the past. Not hating someone is an improvement over hating someone. So what might happen in the future? Might grow to love you. I'm not saying that she's implying that. I'm saying Shakespeare is implying that. Okay? But since that thou canst talk of love so well, thy company which erst was irksome to me, I will endure. She will endure it. She'll abide by it. Sylvius, she goes on, but do not look for further recompense at thine own gladness that thou art employed. Don't hope for more. Don't hope that my spending time with you is going to lead to my falling in love with you. Good advice? Bad advice? What often happens to quote unquote friends? What may happen? Let me put it that way. To quote unquote friends of opposite sexes who spend a lot of time together.
Catch feelings.
Catch fire. They end up falling in love. Okay? Sylvius, so holy and so perfect is my love, and I in such a poverty of grace, a lack of grace, a wanting of grace, that I shall think it a most plenteous crop to glean the broken ears after the man that the main harvest reaps. Fancy language for saying, if I can just be in your presence while you're around, Ganymede, he'll take it. Loose now and then a scattered smile, and that I'll live upon. That will be enough food to sustain me. So she says, you know the youth we were just talking to? Not very well, I've seen him before. Think not I love him, though I ask for him. What does she mean? Oh, I don't love him, just because I'm asking about him. Liar, liar, pencil, liar. 'Tis but a peevish boy, yet he talks well. But what care I for words? Words do, and she delivers what? Almost a 30-line speech, telling him how much she doesn't love this peevish boy. As is said in Macbeth or Hamlet, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Okay? Act 4, Scene 1. Just a couple things. So Rosalind and Jaques talk back and forth. They say, you're a melancholy fellow. Oh, yeah, I do. I am. I do love it better than laughing. This is the kind of guy who enjoys getting depressed. Just loves getting sullen. And those that are an extremity of either, that is, extremity of love or an extremity of laughing, are abominable fellows and betray themselves to every modern censure worse than drunkards. If you give over to laughing, meaning frivolity and joking, she says, you deserve every censure you get. Similarly, if you're totally head over heels in love. Why, 'tis good to be sad and say nothing, then 'tis good to be a post. What? 'Tis good to be dead, unliving. I have neither. Jaques, the scholar's melancholy, which, I'm not gonna skip that. He goes in all these different kinds of melancholy. Okay? And he talks about having been a traveler, wanting to be a traveler, and she says some things about that. Orlando comes in. Jaques leaves, and she says, 37, why, how now, Orlando? Where have you been all this while? Meaning, you're late. You, a lover, and you serve me such another trick, never come in my sight more? You said you loved me. Ganymede pretending to be Rosalind. My fair Rosalind, I come within an hour of my promise. That is, I'm only an hour late. Ladies, You're waiting for somebody and he stands you up for what you're going to do. Yeah, sayonara. Delete that number. Break an hour's promise in love. He that will divide a minute into 1,000 parts and break but a part of the 1,000th part of a minute in the affairs of love. It may be said of him that Cupid hath clapped him over the shoulder, but I'll warrant him heart whole. Pardon me. Nay, you be so tardy, come no more in my sight. I had as lief be wooed of a snail. That's a good place to stop, because that's a disgusting image. I'll put up the quiz. I've got a quiz over Acts 1 through 3, or it's up. I'll make it live. We'll finish this, whatever day that is, on Wednesday.
If we don't get snowed.
It's what?
If we don't get snowed.
Yeah, if we don't get snowed in, check the weather Wednesday morning. I probably won't make a decision unless it starts snowing a lot earlier than it's supposed to.